Madame Arbor described a refugee situation that is not what is happening in Europe at the moment. The great question before us tonight is whether the huddled masses on those teeming shores are really yearning to breathe free, or whether they're simply economic migrants who want to avail themselves of the comforts of advanced societies, as we all would. There are 3,000 people here in Roy Thomson Hall, and it would be nice if everyone in Toronto could be in Roy Thomson Hall. But if everyone in Toronto moves into Roy Thomson Hall, it isn't Roy Thomson Hall anymore. And that's the situation that is faced in Europe today. The people who have entered Europe are not refugees, as that term has traditionally been understood, and as Madame Arbor explained in terms of the Geneva Convention. In 2015, in Europe, men represented 77% of the asylum applications. That's an extraordinary population deformation. In most civil wars, this is the demographic that would be back home fighting for their country. It's as if during the American Revolution, General Washington and the rest of the chaps had gone off to France and left Martha and the other women and children back home to fend for themselves. What does it mean to breathe free? Under the Taliban, it's illegal for Madame Arbor to feel sunlight on her face. It's literally a crime for her to, quote, breathe free. She can breathe only through a mask approved by the man who in effect owns her. So what happens when you put a man from that kind of society in, say, a Scandinavian town? Northern Europe has enjoyed a culture of mixed public bathing since the 19th century, but a benign social activity to Germans and Scandinavians is something entirely different to men from a culture where women are chattels. So female patrons of public baths are now routinely assaulted. And in January, Sweden's national swimming arena was forced for the first time to segregate men and women in the hot tubs. So goodbye to a century-old tradition. Migrant rights trump your culture. Our response is, oh, they come from a different culture. They don't know that you're not meant to grope women's breasts. So in Germany, they put up pictograms with a breast and a groping hand and a red X through it. Last month, a mere fortnight after acing a training course on how to treat women with respect, a 15-year-old Afghan dragged a caterer at a Belgian refugee center into the basement and raped her. Well, we'll fine-tune the course on treating women with respect. We'll get better pictograms. But in the meantime, migrant rights trump women's rights. Madame Arbor was the first prosecutor ever to charge rape as a crime against humanity. In 2007, she published an important report on the use of rape in Sudan as a weapon of war. It was a distressing report. She documented 15 individual cases of sexual assault, including rape, and victims as young as 14. If Madame Arbor were to publish a similar report on Germany today, she'd be able to cite more than 500 cases from just one night in just one town, Cologne on New Year's Eve, and victims as young as 3 years old, a 3-year-old raped by a migrant. A 7-year-old girl was gang raped by 5 migrants in Hamburg just a few days ago. On Wednesday, a schoolgirl was gang raped on the ferry from Sweden to Finland. Migrant rights now trump children's rights. What a pity Madame Arbor's successor at the UN isn't interested in producing a report on that rape epidemic. The police chief of Vienna has advised women that it's no longer safe to go out unaccompanied. Migrant rights trump the right to freedom of movement. It's easy to shrug, oh, well, it's just a few disabled kids, just anecdotes. So forget the anecdotes and run the numbers. In Europe, with unaccompanied minors, 90% are male. which means that in 1 year, Swedish adolescents now have a more distorted sex differential than China does after 30 years of its totalitarian one-child policy. In China, there are 119 boys for every girl. Among Swedish adolescents, just from the last year's importation, it is now 123 boys for every girl. That's a fact of life. And I hope tonight we'll put aside the sentimentalism that often attends this subject and stick with the facts. Madame Arbour said some things that I agree with. She said recently, why are we always talking about the danger that these people will transform us? They may transform us for the better. So she and I agree that immigration on this scale is transformative. The only difference is that Madame Arbour thinks it's for the better, and I don't. And I'm genuinely curious to know what aspects of Afghan and Syrian and Sudanese culture that she would like us to be transformed by. Women's rights, fast-track justice whereby gays get thrown off rooftops, polygamy, child brides, clitoridectomies, the bracing commitment to free speech. I would like an answer on that from Madame Arbour tonight. Thank you very much.
But here's the problem, and here's why we're nervous and we're cautious about opening up our doors to untold millions of people